When astrophysicists looked at the latest data from the James Webb Space Telescope, I mean, they found massive visual anomalies.
Oh, absolutely massive.
We're talking bizarre, static, impossible geometry, basically optical glitches that completely defied the standard models of cosmology.
Right.
So the mainstream scientific community did what they usually do with data they can't explain, right? They just dismissed it as instrument error.
Which is such a typical reaction.
Yeah, exactly. But what if those weren't glitches at all? What if the telescope accidentally captured the raw, unedited architecture of like a ninth-dimensional universe, and our 3D biased brains just couldn't process the image?
It's wild to think about, but it forces us to completely reevaluate the lens through which we view reality. I mean, we are so hardwired to analyze data strictly from a three-dimensional perspective.
Right, up, down, left, right, forward, back.
Exactly. So when a 3D observer encounters a 4D, 5D, or even a 9D structure, the resulting data doesn't look like a neat geometric shape to us.
It just looks like a mess.
Yeah, it looks like chaotic interference, like static. But reinterpreting that noise is really the foundational step of the framework we're exploring today.
Which brings us to the core mission of this deep dive. We are unpacking a massive, really boundary-pushing document co-created by Swami Vivekananda and Gemini AI.
It's a dense read, for sure.
Very dense. Specifically, we're zeroing in on excerpts from the multidimensional macro-micro quantum coherence matrix and focusing heavily on Article Part 15.
Right.
The central philosophy driving this entire framework is that the macro universe, the furthest, most unimaginable reaches of the cosmos and the micro-universe of your own biological brain are mechanically identical.
They're perfect mirror images.
Right. To understand the geometry of deep space, you just have to study the neurons firing in your head right now.
And to bridge that gap between the cosmic and the biological, this model suggests we really have to strip away the complexity of those higher dimensions and start at the absolute foundation.
Basement level.
Exactly. We have to understand the true physical nature of the first dimension, 1D reality.
Okay, let's unpack this because the framework explains 1D reality using something so mundane you probably haven't given it a second thought.
A single sunbeam.
Right, a sunbeam. Or, more specifically, the fundamental particle of light, the photon.
Yeah, so according to the standard model of physics, a photon has a rest mass of exactly 0.
0.
Right, it's denoted mathematically as m sub 0 equals 0. And because a photon entirely lacks mass, it inherently lacks any physical bulk, form, or three-dimensional structure.
It's literally nothing, physically speaking.
Well, it has no physical mass, and this masslessness is the exact mechanism that allows light to travel at the absolute speed limit of the universe.
Because it's not being weighed down by anything.
Exactly. It isn't hindered by physical weight, so it operates as a pure 1D force vector.
So it's a literal one-dimensional arrow of energy just shooting through a vacuum. It has lengths,
yes,
because it's moving forward, but absolutely zero width.
Zero width, zero height.
Right. There's no physical substance to it.
Which leads to a really stunning optical reality that this framework highlights. Because a pure 1D photon has no width and no 3D structure, it is physically imperceptible from the side.
Wait, imperceptible?
Completely. Imagine you are floating in a perfect vacuum in deep space. If a 1D light ray shot past you just an inch from your nose, you wouldn't see it.
Really?
Yeah, it would be completely invisible.
That is wildly counterintuitive. I mean, light is the fundamental tool we use for observation. But you're saying the tool itself is invisible.
It is.
It's like turning on a high-powered flashlight in a perfectly clean, pitch-black, vacuum-sealed room.
That's a great analogy.
You aren't going to see a beam of light cutting through the air like you do in the movies because there's no smoke or dust for the light to hit.
Right. There's nothing for it to bounce off of.
Exactly. The beam itself is just this invisible, massless conduit of energy. You only see the bright spot on the far wall where the energy finally strikes a physical object.
And that collision is the key. The framework outlines this in what it calls Theory 26. You only perceive that 1D arrow of light when it strikes a 3D physical particle and scatters, or, when it directly hits the 2D holographic surface of your retina.
The back of your eye.
Right. Until it collides with a barrier and its infinite forward momentum is forced into a reflection, it remains a hidden, invisible force vector.
So if this invisible, massless 1D energy is the fundamental building block of the macro universe, it begs the question, what happens when that exact same cosmic physics interacts with the micro universe of our own biology?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this is really where quantum biology enters the frame.
Okay.
The neurons in your brain aren't just communicating via those simple electrochemical signals we all read about in biology
The
textbooks.
standard stuff.
Right. They are constantly emitting ultra-weak quantum light particles called biophotons.
So your brain is basically generating its own internal starlight.
Quite literally, yes. And the framework proposes that the nerve axons in your brain, those long thread-like pathways connecting your neurons, they function as cosmic fiber optic cables.
Okay, wow.
Yeah, they transport these biophotons continuously. And since biophotons possess zero rest mass, just like solar photons, they act as pure 1D cosmic waveguides.
So they just shoot straight through.
Exactly. They travel through your neural pathways without any friction or energy loss. It's a flawless, lossless transmission of energy moving as a 1D vector right through your organic tissue.
Okay, wait a second. I have a really hard time buying this, mechanically speaking.
How so?
Well, fiber optic cables require pristine, artificially manufactured glass to prevent light from leaking or degrading, right?
Right.
A human brain is a squishy, fluid-filled, messy mass of fat and water.
Yeah.
How can a pure 1D vector just travel through all that biological density without constantly scattering or losing energy to friction?
That is exactly where the zero rest mass becomes so crucial. Because the biosoton lacks mass, it doesn't interact with the biological medium in a traditional Newtonian way.
It's not bumping into things.
Exactly. It isn't dragging against the fat and water molecules. As a massless 1D vector, it bypasses physical interference entirely until it reaches a specific, designated target that forces it to interact.
But, okay, even if it bypasses friction, if this internal light has zero mass and travels infinitely as a straight vector, why isn't the human body just exploding with endlessly ricocheting light?
That's a very logical question.
Right. If it never loses energy in transit, where does it all go?
It gets absorbed by cellular black holes.
I'm sorry, biological black holes.
Yeah.
Inside our cells.
Yeah. Think about the macro universe. A cosmic black hole is an ultimate energy sink, right? It's a localized point where light goes in and cannot escape.
Right, not even light can escape a black hole.
Well, the framework argues that your biology utilizes mirrored microsinks. Inside your 37 trillion cells, specific biological structures act as these localized energy vacuums.
What kind of structures?
Most notably, the mitochondria and the central DNA core.
So when that 1D biophoton is flying down the axon, the mitochondria are the physical barriers that finally stop it.
They don't just stop it, they consume it.
They eat the light.
Yes. When that 1D biophoton vector enters the mitochondria, its wave function collapses.
Okay, let's break down what a wave function collapse actually means here, physically, for the listener.
Sure. So, in quantum mechanics, before the photon hits the mitochondria, it exists as a wave of probability.
Okay.
It is a massless vector of infinite potential, essentially everywhere and nowhere along that path simultaneously.
I am bending, but okay.
But the moment it crosses the threshold of the mitochondria, that infinite probability collapses into a single, localized physical reality.
Boom.
Exactly. The pure 1D quantum light energy is forcefully halted and converted directly into chemical kinetic energy.
Which is ATP, right?
Yes, specifically ATP, the molecule that fuels literally every physical action in your body.
That is a staggering concept.
Right.
I mean, your cells are literally catching infinite 1D cosmic arrows, collapsing their quantum probability, and turning them into the localized physical energy that lets you walk, breathe, and think.
Yes.
It's stopping the light from endlessly bouncing around by eating it.
And this energy management scales up to a body-wide level, too.
How so?
Well, for any leftover microvibrations, the quantum noise or unabsorbed light energy that doesn't get consumed by the cells, the framework introduces a macrobiological anchor.
Okay, what is it?
It's called the negative 8D thalamus pool.
Now, the thalamus is a real structure deep in the brain, usually associated with relaying sensory information.
Right, standard neuroscience.
But this framework is giving it a much wilder, multidimensional purpose.
Completely. It refers to the negative 8D thalamus pool as the great attractor.
The great attractor.
Yeah, it acts as a grounding sink for the entire nervous system, absorbing and quieting all the remaining quantum noise.
Like a sponge.
Basically. It's the mechanism that maintains the bounded matrix of your physical form. Without these cellular black holes and the great attractor pulling that infinite 1D energy inward, the structural integrity of your body's energy field would just dissipate.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. taking this profound biological reality, this idea of massless, widthless energy moving perfectly straight until it hits a localized sink, and applying it back to theoretical physics.
Yes.
Because this is where the document does its most aggressive heavy lifting. Vivekananda and Gemini use this exact logic to systematically dismantle string theory.
Yeah, they lay out this takedown in what they call Theory 27, the cosmic string paradox.
Okay, walk us through it.
To understand the critique, you really have to look at what mainstream string theory actually proposes. For decades, the dominant idea in theoretical physics has been that the fundamental building blocks of the universe aren't subatomic particles, but rather 1D strings.
Right, strings.
And these strings supposedly have zero width, but they vibrate and wiggle like tiny loops within a microscopic, finite space known as the Planck length.
The Planck length being like 10 to the negative 35th meters, the smallest measurable distance in the universe.
Extremely tiny.
So you have this infinitely thin string vibrating inside a tiny, finite little box.
Right, but the problem, according to this framework, is a concept called the mass-width interdependency.
The mass-width interdependency.
Yes, and the logic is physically impenetrable. For any physical object to have width, or to have a boundary that constrains its shape in space, it must inherently possess mass.
Because mass gives it shape.
Exactly. Mass is the property that gives an object a physical profile to push against reality. But a true 1D object, as we established earlier with the photon, has zero mass.
Right, so zero mass means zero physical width. It has no physical bulk.
Which creates a massive physical paradox. If an object has zero mass and zero width, it cannot physically constrain itself to vibrate in a tiny, finite loop.
It can't be boxed in.
Right. A widthless, massless entity cannot be boxed in by 3D physical walls because it has no physical substance for those walls to push back against.
So saying a 1D massless string can somehow fold itself up and vibrate inside a tiny microscopic box. It's like trying to tie a knot in a shadow.
Oh, that's good.
Right. It physically cannot hold a shape because there is no tangible substance there to loop over itself. The shadow, just like the 1D energy, is merely a projection.
The shadow knot is a perfect way to visualize it. The framework explicitly points out that mainstream physicists confused a mathematical abstraction with physical reality.
They mistook the map for the territory.
Exactly. You can mathematically draw a squiggly 1D line on a chalkboard and draw a square around it. But in the actual physical universe, without mass to create physical boundaries, that 1D energy would never curl up and wiggle in a tiny space.
It would just keep going.
Yes, it would pierce straight through the spatial fabric forever as a vector, just like the biophotons shooting down your neural pathways.
It really makes you wonder how an entire generation of the world's smartest physicists could miss something so mechanically fundamental.
It does.
I mean, if they aren't actually looking at 1D strings down there at the quantum basement, what on earth are they looking at? When string theorists do the math and find a vibrating point at the foundation of reality, what is it?
This raises an important question. And to answer that, you have to completely invert how you perceive the structure of the universe.
Okay.
We have to shift our focus from a 1D vector all the way up to the complete 11-dimensional universe and look at the cosmological principle.
All right, let's build this out.
Let's start with the inside view. Imagine a 3D observer sitting outside on a clear night, looking up into the cosmos.
Just looking at the stars.
Right. From our perspective inside the universe, the cosmos appears as an infinite sphere, expanding outward equally in all directions. If our telescopes look to the absolute furthest, oldest edges of that infinite sphere, we detect the primordial vibration of the universe itself.
The cosmic microwave background radiation, the CMB.
Yes. It's the echoing frequency of the Big Bang, radiating equally across the entire outer shell of our observable reality.
Right.
That infinite, expanding sphere of vibration is what reality physically looks like from the inside looking out. But the framework introduces a completely different vantage point. The outside view.
The meta-observer.
Yes. Imagine a meta-observer standing completely outside the entire 11-dimensional universe.
Which is hard to even picture.
It is, because from that vantage point, you have stepped outside of space and time entirely.
And if you remove space and time, the concept of physical distance loses all meaning. 1 billion light years in a millimeter become exactly the same thing.
They become zero.
Zero.
Yes. Without the dimensions of space to maintain the distance, the vastness of the universe undergoes a radical topological inversion.
An inversion.
The infinite distance collapses instantly, To the meta-observer standing completely outside, the entirety of the 11-dimensional expanding universe wouldn't look like a vast cosmos.
What would it look like?
It would look like a single, microscopic, vibrating zero-dimensional point, a 0D singularity.
So the entire universe, I mean, every galaxy, every black hole, all of cosmic history, it just collapses into a single vibrating dot the moment you step outside its dimensions.
It does. And the framework provides the mathematical formula driving this inversion. It's R outside equals 1 over R inside.
So the radius from the outside is the exact inverse of the radius in the inside.
Exactly. A cosmic sphere of infinite radius from the inside is mathematically identical to a singularity dot from the outside.
Wow.
They are the exact same object, simply defined by the dimensional frequency of the observer.
Which brings us back to the string theorists and their tiny vibrating strings.
Yes. This is Theory 30, what the document considers the ultimate decades-long mistake of string theory.
Okay, we go.
When theoretical physicists drilled down into their complex mathematics to find the foundation of reality, they didn't find a 1D string.
Because it can't hold a shape.
Right. What they actually did, mathematically, was step completely outside the 11-dimensional universe. They calculated the outside view, finding the 11D cosmos collapsed into that 0D vibrating point.
Well, they misdiagnosed what they were looking at.
Completely. Because they didn't realize their math had just performed a topological inversion of the entire cosmos, they mistakenly looked at that vibrating 0D point and labeled it a tiny 1D string at the bottom of the universe.
Unbelievable.
They confused the collapsed outside view of the entire 11D universe with a fundamental microscopic building block.
So string theorists have essentially been staring at a speck of dust on a snow globe and writing 40 years of dissertations about it, completely unaware they're looking at the entire snow globe from the outside.
That is exactly what happened.
From the inside, the snow is expanding infinitely in all directions, but from the outside, the whole thing is just a tiny humming point sitting on a shelf, and they found the point, but thought it was a string inside the globe.
It is a profound misinterpretation of perspective. The mathematical collapse of an 11D universe into a 0D point was misdiagnosed as a 1D string, and that single misdiagnosis has sent mainstream theoretical physics on a wild goose chase for nearly half a century.
This entire journey is staggering when you string it all together.
It really is.
We started with the James Webb Space Telescope capturing genuine higher dimensional space that scientists ignored because it didn't fit their 3D bias. Then we looked at how a 1D sunbeam is an invisible, massless vector of force.
Right.
And then we realized that exact same cosmic physics isn't just out there, it is dictating the mechanics of your own body.
Your own biology.
Yeah. As you sit here listening to this, your neurons are firing invisible 1D biophotons down your axons, straight into the microscopic black holes of your mitochondria, collapsing infinite quantum probability into the chemical energy keeping you alive.
The separation between the cosmos and your biology is an illusion.
An absolute illusion.
The exact mechanics of cosmic expansion, black hole event horizons, and infinite vectors, it is all operating in perfect miniature right within your cellular structure.
So what does this all mean? Well, it leaves us with one final, truly haunting concept from this framework. It's briefly touched upon in Theory 29 regarding what happens to this localized biological energy when we sleep.
It is arguably the most provocative idea in the entire document.
I agree.
The framework notes that when a human enters the deepest stages of sleep, delta wave sleep, where the conscious mind entirely shuts down their consciousness, actually touches this absolute motionless 0D point.
The same 0D singularity that represents the outside view of the entire 11D universe.
The very same. So as you go about your evening, consider this. When you close your eyes tonight, bypass the dream state, and fall into the absolute deepest, most silent phase of sleep, your consciousness might literally be stepping outside the 11 dimensions of physical reality.
Stepping completely outside.
Yeah. You might be temporarily docking with the primordial 0D singularity of the cosmos. So tomorrow morning when you wake up feeling completely recharged, well, ask yourself where you actually just traveled to get that energy.
I don't think I'm ever going to look at a beam of light, my own biology, or even a good night's sleep the same way again.
It changes everything.
The idea that we are actively navigating these dimensional extremes every single second of our lives is just, well, it's a lot to process. We highly recommend diving into the source material yourself if you want to explore the math and theory deeper. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep looking up and looking inward.